Over the top of an area of high pressure, and it's that high pressure that is going to increasingly dominate the weather across the UK during the rest of the week. That's led to plenty of clear skies through the day, and we keep those clear skies through the Midlands, eastern and southern England, as well as East Wales overnight. But elsewhere, thicker cloud rolls in, and that cloud producing some spots of rain for the north and west of Scotland, Northern Ireland, north west England. Keeping the temperatures mild, 14 or 15 Celsius under the cloud, cooler towards the southeast, but that's where we'll see the best of the sunshine first thing Wednesday. Meanwhile, it's a gloomy start to the day for the north and west of Scotland. Light rain and drizzle here, especially for western coasts and hills. Northern Ireland, likewise, the north seeing spells of rain and drizzle first thing. Nothing particularly heavy, but it's going to be a damp and gloomy start. North Wales, similar, but the cloud more patchy across the north and west of England, and for the southeast, it's sunny skies. That will help the temperatures rise through the morning. It's going to be a warm day. But for much of England and Wales, as well as eastern Scotland, it does turn brighter. The cloud thins and breaks into the afternoon. I think we'll keep the thick, low cloud for the north and west of Scotland, some drizzle remaining into the afternoon here, keeping temperatures at 17 or 18 Celsius. But under the sunshine elsewhere, mid to even the high 20s are possible. So a very warm day to come for many, and it's going to turn even warmer during the next few days, with high pressure building widely, pushing weather fronts well to the north, widespread sunny skies developing by the start of the weekend. And watch how those temperatures rise. It's not just the south, but further north as well.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Imagine having an extra £1,000 to spend each week for an entire year. £54,321 in tax-free cash could be yours. Cash to spend however you like. £54,321 in cash could be landing in your bank account this year. For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
and you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is he? What's he doing
They
there?
already know who you are, though.
Don't miss this special reunion, Eamon and Anne together again only on GB News Breakfast this weekend from 6 a.m.
And is that a gardening tan?
No, it's a cypress tan.
Hello, good evening. It's me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, on State of the Nation tonight. In a moment, we'll be bringing you the King's speech live from the state banquet at Windsor Castle for the President of the French Republic and Mrs. Macron. His Majesty is expected to pay tribute to the 1,000 years of shared history and culture between the two nations and reflect on the importance of cooperation between the two countries. However, in the meantime, we'll be looking into one very particular comment regarding borders and ask whether this is the King's speech or the government speech. Plus, we mark the death of one of the great politicians of the 20th century, Norman Tebbit, with his successor as MP for Chingford and former Tory party leader, Sir Ian Duncan Smith. State of the Nation starts now. To be joined by my panel, former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie, and former Labour Party Special Advisor, Scarlett Maguire. As ever, it's a crucial part of the programme. Let me know your views, mailmog@gbnews.com. But now, it's your favourite time of the day, the News Bulletin with Sam Francis.
Jacob, thank you, and very good evening to you. Just coming up to 2 minutes past 8. The top story, Emmanuel Macron has delivered a landmark address to both houses of Parliament today, calling for a renewed French-British unity to, he says, protect global order. Speaking in the Royal Gallery, the French president praised the brotherhood of arms that has defined the nation's shared history and declared, quote, Europeans will never abandon Ukraine. He urged the UK and France to shout order to the world and said the fight for a Ukraine ceasefire must continue to the very last minute. Later at tonight's state banquet, the King is also expected to say that both nations face complex threats, but will meet them as friends and allies. Well, as President Macron spends the week in London, wildfires have broken out in the south of France, with Marseille Airport closed. Around 200 firefighters, backed by helicopters and fire engines, are battling the blaze. Residents have been told to stay indoors and keep streets clear for emergency crews. So far, no casualties have been reported, but flights have been diverted to other regional airports. Back here at home, meanwhile, Greg Wallace has been sacked as presenter of MasterChef after an independent inquiry into allegations of serious misconduct. That decision comes as 50 new claims have emerged, including accusations that Wallace groped colleagues and exposed himself to junior staff. He denies the allegations. In a statement, he also says he has been cleared of the most serious claims, but admitted some past comments and behaviour had been inappropriate. Well, Grace Dent and John Turode will front the next series of Celebrity MasterChef. The Horizon IT scandal had disastrous consequences for sub-postmasters and may have contributed to at least 13 people taking their own lives. That's according to a major public inquiry. The report concluded that post office bosses maintained the fiction that the Horizon software was always inaccurate, even as innocent staff were wrongly prosecuted. It found victims and their families should now be eligible to compensation. The Post Office has issued an unreserved apology, calling it a shameful period in its history. Chairman of the inquiry, Sir Wyn Williams, summarised his findings.
As I have said once already, but I repeat, the picture which has emerged and which is described in my report is profoundly disturbing. In summary, what does that picture reveal? Many thousands of people have suffered serious financial detriment, and for a sizable proportion, that detriment subsists. Many people have, inevitably, suffered emotional turmoil and significant stress in consequence.
In other news tonight, junior doctors here in England have voted in favour of taking strike action over a pay dispute. That's according to the BMA. Resident doctors, otherwise known as junior doctors, are seeking a 29% pay rise. There are fears, though, the industrial action will now cause prolonged disruption in the NHS, with walkouts potentially lasting until January of next year. Number 10 said this lunchtime that resident doctors have already had a pay rise of almost 29% over the past 3 years, adding that it was disappointing that they want to strike. And Lord Tebbit, one of the most influential Conservative politicians of the Thatcher era, has died at the age of 94. He entered Parliament in 1970, serving as party chairman and held several cabinet roles. Downing Street said today he was a major figure in British politics who will be missed by many. That's the news on GB News. I'll be back with the top stories at 9. Now, though, it's over to Jacob.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Well, welcome back to State of the Nation. In a moment, we will be going live to Windsor Castle, where the King will address the state banquet attended by the President of the French Republic and Mrs Macron. This speech has been widely briefed to the press, including the fact that he will reflect on our supposedly shared 1,000-year history and how he remains in awe of the extraordinary achievements of the French Republic. No doubt not mentioning that it was founded in the blood of the terror of 1792, when Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette were so brutally murdered. However, we saw on the front pages this morning that we're also to expect a more political line from the speech. The briefing suggests he will highlight the shared multitude of complex threats we both face, and that as allies we must face them together. That these challenges know no borders, no fortress can protect us against them this time. It's rather feeble compared to his time-honoured ancestor, John of Gaunt, who called England this other Eden, demi-paradise, this fortress built by nature for herself against infection and the hand of war. He forgot to mention a fortress against illegal immigrants, too. Nonetheless, it's a highly political remark to make. And why would the King claim there are no borders between the United Kingdom and France? Why would the King say no fortress can protect us? Clearly, this refers to the Channel migrant crisis. But the question is, was this line included at the instruction and approval of 10 Downing Street? There are generally two types of speeches made by a constitutional monarch. The King's speech in Parliament is made on behalf of the government. It is written by the government. It is an inherently and explicitly political speech. On the other hand, the King's Christmas speech is a personal, apolitical one. So is tonight's speech that we'll be airing live shortly a personal one or a political one on the advice of Number 10? Well, in the lobby earlier today, the government refused to comment on whether it agrees with the King's forthcoming remarks and refused to say whether the speech was agreed by Number 10. In other words, His Majesty's government is distancing itself from His Majesty, making the King responsible for the speech, which means they are leaving the King to swim in political waters in a way the late Queen would never have done. We're all used to the green obsession, which some of us find a bit tiresome, but the nation's grown used to it. But going soft on immigration is really a bit much. The King's impartiality is crucial. It's not mere tradition. It's the quiet anchor of the Constitution. He stands above politics, not to wield power, but to remind us that authority must serve all, not some. In his silence, there is stability. In his restraints, the enduring trust of a nation of differing political values. So remarks like this are controversial. As ever, let me know your views, mailmog@gbnews.com. But I'm joined now by the friend of the Royals and royal journalist, Robert Hardman. Robert, what is Downing Street playing at? Why won't they say that this speech has been approved by them, which constitutionally it ought to have been?
Well, good evening, Jacob. Yes, you're right. I mean, constitutionally, it ought to have been. I suspect it has been. I suspect, as is often the case with all things royal, nothing is more likely to send government spin doctors and spokespeople into an absolute tizzy than being asked anything about the royals. They're always terrified of getting it wrong. But yes, you're right. Constitutionally, this speech would have been written on advice. It won't be like the King's speech in Parliament, which is written by, and it won't be like the Christmas speech, which is written by the monarch himself and is occasionally as a courtesy shown to the government, but is very much down to the monarch. This falls halfway between and is what is known as on advice. And it will have been batted between the Palace, the Foreign Office and Downing Street several times. I've looked in the files. Some of the files have been declassified on, for example, the Queen's state visit to Paris in 1972, which was a very important one because it was effectively a sort of coronation of Britain's entry into what was then the EEC. And the speech went backwards and forwards many times, and there were sort of red lines because the sort of Heath government were trying to get the Queen to say, you know, the EEC is the greatest thing ever, and it's absolutely wonderful. The Palace was sort of toning it down a bit to sort of say, well, this is a very important moment, but so I'm quite sure that this is not the King freelancing. This has been done in careful consultation, and let's see if maybe a few words have changed when he actually comes to deliver it.
And who is doing the briefing? Because there seems to be quite a determined effort to brief the speech, again in a surprisingly political way, whereas normally these speeches are briefed pretty neutrally as a courtesy to the visiting head of state, rather than the king is saying there are no borders and there's no chance of the UK being a fortress.
Well, I'm not on the receiving end of the weekend briefings that are on this, but I mean, yes, you're right. There is quite a sort of it has a slightly sort of a political flavour. I mean, don't forget you've got several different sources for this sort of thing. You've got the Foreign Office and their channels, Downing Street. I don't think the palace will have just been sort of, holding lobby-style briefings. But we have come to see there has been a sort of change in tone. Every reign is slightly different. One thing we've noticed with the new reign, which I've certainly noticed writing the King's biography, is that it's very much a feature of his visits overseas, particularly in Europe, is to deliver really quite emphatic and detailed speeches in the parliaments of the country he's visiting. Here he is welcoming President Macron this morning. That's Datchet Road at Windsor. I was there watching them arrive, waving up at St George's School over the road. And what happens now on these visits is the king very much, there is more meat to them. I mean, the late Queen didn't talk to that many parliaments when she went overseas. She'd do a speech at a banquet, maybe one other short speech. So there is greater political engagement, and that does, he obviously he needs to tread carefully. I mean, he knows that better than anybody, but certainly if you look at his speeches to the German Parliament, the French Parliament, most recently the Italian Parliament, these are sort of 30-minute speeches. Obviously the Canadian Parliament just the other day. There is a degree of him in them. They are all run by the Foreign Office, but there's a lot of him in them too.
But there seems to be quite delicate territory, because saying the UK is not a fortress when immigration is at the forefront of political debate seems to be a bit of a snub to reform, and therefore either it should be owned by the government or the king shouldn't be saying it.
Well, we'll have to see how it sort of pans out, at the end. What else is said in the speech? B, does Downing Street does it still insist tomorrow morning, well, that was all new to us, we didn't know anything about that? I suspect they won't. I think there's like I say, I think there's this is a relatively new government still finding its feet with regards to the monarchy, and terrified of any kind of misstep. I mean, if you sort of were to ring them up and ask Downing Street what time is the King's speech on Christmas Day, you won't be told 3 p.m. They'll be told, I'm afraid we'll have to get back to you on that. No one wants to say anything. So let's see how it pans out. I mean, there was a case you will know well, when there was a row afterwards, the Queen's famous speech in her Silver Jubilee year, when devolution was on the rise, and she talked about how I shall never forget I was crowned Queen of a United Kingdom, which was seen very much as a snub to devolution forces. And that afterwards there was a big row between the palace, the Scottish Office, Number 10, as to who'd approved what in that, because that really was controversial. Let's see how the wording comes out tonight, and then debate it.
Thank you very much, Robert. Thank you for joining me. Well, with me now is the great constitutionalist and political scientist. I think it's fair to say the United Kingdom's leading constitutionalist, Sir Vernon Bogdanor. Vernon, thank you very much for coming in. You know very well how these speeches are done. Any speech by the King must be a speech of his government, mustn't it?
That's absolutely right. As both you and Robert have said, this speech is on advice. Now, it doesn't follow that the King might not have exerted a lot of influence on the speech, perhaps more than his mother would have done, and he may want more substance put into it than the government would have liked. But nevertheless, the government is responsible for it. So it is strange, as you said, that the government is not prepared to take responsibility for it.
Which leaves the King slightly sort of hanging in the air in this context, that he's saying something about not being a fortress that seems deeply political, that Reform is campaigning hard to reduce immigration. There's a major problem with the illegal boat crossings. And the King is now saying, well, between us and France, there's no border. We're not a fortress. If that isn't on the instructions of the government, surely the King shouldn't say it.
Absolutely right. But the fortress point may not refer only to immigration. There are a number of other issues where Britain and France need to be together. Obviously, environmental matters don't take notice of national borders. More importantly, perhaps, Britain and France are, in a sense, guarantors of a liberal order in the world when it's under threat from so many countries. France and Britain have the longest parliamentary histories of any major countries in Europe. And then there's a question which is absolutely vital of European defence when faced with President Putin. I mean, Europe is the only one of the major configurations in the world which can't defend itself. You may argue that Britain and France, as nuclear powers, ought to take the lead in bringing together a coalition of the willing to organise European defence. It may be that's what the fortress refers to, not only immigration.
Yes, except immigration is at the forefront of people's minds. So I absolutely accept that the king can say off his own bat that it's important that we're friendly with our neighbours. But fortress in this context seems to be a slightly anti-reform comment and possibly also a slightly anti-Trump comment, as Trump sees to secure the American borders.
Well, neither the king nor the government are responsible to President Trump.
No, indeed, but they want to have good relations with him.
But on the question of immigration, you may argue, and I would argue, it can only be resolved by agreement between Britain and France. And dare I say it to you, Jacob, that agreement might have been easier to obtain if we were still in the European Union. As it is, it's now rather more difficult, but nevertheless, it can't be solved without it.
Actually, under the Dublin Agreement, we took more people than we sent back. So it didn't actually work under the European Union, but you know I'd say that. But I'm interested in the constitutionality of it and how important it is that the king avoids political interference. We knew as Prince of Wales that he was very concerned about green issues, but green issues are themselves increasingly political. Is it still wise for him, unless this is a government speech and he's just reading it out, to keep on pushing that green agenda when other politicians, including Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the opposition, are beginning to say we can't afford this green agenda anymore? Isn't that just too political for him now he's the king?
Well, here I go back to your earlier view. The government should have given him protection. It's very unusual for a government not to do that, and I think, frankly, it's a misstep if that is what they've done. The speech is delivered on advice, and it's not his own speech. Whatever his own views, we know his views about climate change and all the rest of it. But the speech is the government's speech, and they should protect him.
Yes, I agree with that. And it's been briefed, whoever's briefed it, as if the king were making a political intervention on these two points. It's been pushed forward as if it were very much the king, whereas previously governments have been very careful with the king's speech and previously the queen's speech to make it absolutely clear that the words are spoken by the king, but they are written by the government.
Absolutely right. But the king is perfectly entitled, before delivering the speech, to use his influence, to use his soft power, if you like, and I suspect that he uses it rather more than the late Queen did. But he's perfectly entitled to do that. He's entitled to be consulted, to encourage and to warn, and he's going to use those constitutional rights to the full, I imagine. I see nothing wrong with that at all.
The Queen did use influence with the Queen's speech. I don't think I'm giving away any great secrets. The main instruction from Buckingham Palace as she got older was that it should be short. She didn't like long-winded speeches, and rather splendidly, the only thing she would refer to as "our" was "our armed forces." She would not utter the cheesy "our NHS," much as governments wished her to do this. So that's par for the course, and then the speech is owned by the government. But the Queen managed to survive as Queen for 60-odd years, and did this because she was never seen as being political. And it seems to me the government is doing the king a disservice by not protecting him. It's perfectly reasonable for the government to have this view on the fortress and this view on green issues, but we all need to be loyal to our sovereign.
Yes, I agree absolutely with that. That's absolutely right.
Excellent. Well, Vernon, thank you very much indeed. Next, we're going to be talking about the death of the great Norman Tebbit, and I'll be joined by his successor as Chingford MP, Sir Ian Duncan-Smith.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
My eye this morning, because I say it all the time, you can't say gents at work. You're deemed to be not inclusive.
It's not inclusive. This comes from a tribunal which took place where a woman took umbrage at one of her bosses using the term in an email, dear gents. Well, you can't use the word gent. I mean, I wonder what it's like when you go to the gents now, whether you have to say going to the non-gender specific lavatories. It's a phrase. It shows that you're a bit old, they say, using the word gents. Now, I mean, I don't regard myself as old, although some may disagree with that.
This caught my eye as well, because one of your lovely presenters, who's on, I believe, at 6 o'clock, Michelle Dewberry, she very often says, you know, thank you, gents. I don't think she's
polite.
I don't think she's going to be changing. But it's when you look into this story, there was a little bit more to this than meets the eye, because this email was sent round by management in this insurance company, and one of the ladies who was on a list to be made redundant, along with men, used that email as evidence as to why there was discrimination going on. So there was a little bit more to this, and what the court said was that, you know, this was clumsy language, but this was managerial incompetence. And I don't think we should in any way take that as meaning it's got any wider.
So hang on, the court even said it's clumsy language?
The court said it was clumsy language.
In
I mean, they shouldn't be using that language, but what I'm saying is I don't think this means that we have to all change our behaviour because of this one.
But what next, Anna?
Decision.
I've noticed a trend among, particularly in younger people, to call people guys, even women.
Yeah.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Today we learnt the sad news that the former Conservative Cabinet Minister and stalwart of the Thatcher era, Lord Tebbit, has died aged 94. Lord Tebbit devoted much of his adult life to political service and was crucial to the success of Margaret Thatcher's leadership throughout the 1980s. Born into a working-class North London family in 1931, he spent 6 years as a pilot in the Royal Air Force before moving into journalism, and in 1970 got elected to Parliament representing the North London constituency of Chingford. Norman Tebbit's remarkable career was marred by the Brighton bombing attack by the IRA in 1984, which injured his wife Margaret so severely that she remained disabled up until her death in 2020. The scenes of Norman Tebbit being rescued from the rubble still haunt the memories of those who remember the incident to this day. His political legacy is not least partly defined by the immortal phrase, "on your bike," which were not quite the words he used, and because almost as perpetually divisive as his party's leadership at the time. Lord Tebbit's impact on British political life has been profound. He was part of the team that saved us from ruin in the 1980s. Well, I'm joined now by the former Conservative Party leader and successor to Lord Tebbit as MP for Chingford, Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, as well as my panel, the former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie, and the former Labour Party Special Advisor, Scarlett Maguire. Ian, thank you very much for coming in. You knew Norman extremely well.
Yeah.
It must have been a pretty hard act to follow when you took over in Chingford.
It was an impossible act to follow, and the answer was don't follow it. I mean, that's the only way you can deal with that. I mean, Norman was completely and utterly his own man. There'll not be another Norman Tebbit, and there hadn't been previously. He was unusual, really. I think he was critical to Thatcher's success for a couple of important reasons. Number one, because he kind of gave a physical sense to the public that Norman was of them, but at the same time had come through. And it was the Conservative Party. It was about shifting change and 1979, went with the sort of idea of the council house sales, that there was an idea that if you want to get on, you can get on. This is not a glass ceiling any longer. Class was beginning to disintegrate. And Tebbit, in a sense, was right, without ever, you'd never say it, but he was right in the middle of it, because he embodied a lot of that. And it was really important, because he was able to reach out to lots of people that Conservatives hadn't been able to reach out to previously about aspiration, and it was very much Norman. But he did it in a way which was wonderful. He never raised his voice. There's an almost sinister, low speak that he had. And he had a sense of humour that was, could cut the air with a knife when he wanted to, but also made you laugh at the same time.
And he was obviously the employment secretary who introduced the trade union reforms. Yeah. And that was really the linchpin of the Thatcher reforms, wasn't it, that made the economy function?
Exactly, because we'd had this whole period of strike after strike after strike and wildcat strikes and everything else going on. And for Labour, it was a nightmare, and they were in government. Real difficulties they had with them, all those great cries of beer and sandwiches at number 10. And he stuck to his guns and got that legislation through. It has been changed a bit since then, or quite a lot, and it looks like now this present bill is going to radically return it towards where it was. But the reality was, during that period, it helped, therefore, Thatcher go through that period with fewer strikes. They started to fade away, and more productivity from industry, etc., coming as a result of that.
And he remained a very powerful figure in the Tory party, even after he stood down. You are bound to remember when he pretty much stormed the lectern at the Tory party conference in the middle of the ERM debate.
I do.
And expressed his view. And the Tory party, if he'd been in Parliament at that time, would have had him as leader like a shot.
Well, I also remember that the man sitting behind him was the Chancellor, Ken Clarke. And his final barbed remark about Ken was like a dagger flying at him. He said to John Major, he turned and said, "Prime Minister, I have read the Maastricht Treaty, but I understand one of your cabinet ministers actually extols the virtues of not reading the treaty that he has signed." And everybody knew he was referring to the Chancellor. And, of course, that brought the whole roof down. That was classic Tebbit sort of joke, but barbed like mad.
And it was a sort of surgical strike, because the spitting image of him, which I think did him a lot of good, actually,
no question,
was that he basically went around with a baseball bat, and if you didn't agree with him, whack. But he wasn't really like that, was he? He was to the point and effective at getting his way through clever argument and decisive moments.
He wasn't frightened of saying something that would stir up a debate. The cricket test was a good example of that. He knew exactly what he was doing, and of course it did exactly that. It created this debate about, support and everything else that, to a degree, hasn't gone away today. Now you can agree with him or disagree with him, but nonetheless, that's what Tebbit had as an effect on public thinking and debate. And so he wasn't frightened of all that. But for him, I think, if I might stray into this, his sad part was, of course, the terrible Brighton bombing. And people don't realise how badly injured he was, because it wasn't visible, but he had the whole of his stomach area and guts were ripped apart by the damage that was entailed. So for years after that, and almost to the last time I saw him, he suffered these waves of pain that would come. And being Tebbit, he stuck it out, and you'd just see occasionally a little wince. But also Margaret, no longer able to look after herself. And the thing that I remember seeing him, and which was really terrible, was when, during the Good Friday Agreement, of course, the agreement to let people out, and one of them was the bomber who bombed them at Brighton. And he said it was like a body blow when you see this man walking free. And as he said to me, he may walk free, but my wife will never walk again. And he said, this is, and he wouldn't forgive him, because he said, to be forgiven, you need to say that you were wrong and that you regret what you did, and that therefore you wish, therefore, to have peace. He said he never did, so he couldn't forgive him on that basis.
But Kelvin, let me bring you in, because obviously you were editor at The Sun at this point, and Norman provided you with endless stories, didn't he? He was
yes,
good.
I mean, so I was the editor during the Thatcher years. It was fantastic. I mean, it was unbelievable. They were breaking down every barrier that had been neatly constructed by the Labour Party of the 70s. It was an absolute nightmare, our country. I don't think anybody could have... by the way, there's some signs that we're going back to it as well, so start writing all this down. So if you want to find out what the future looks like, just look at what the 1970s looked like. It was a dreadful place. He and a few others took on, by the way. I mean, one of the great things about whenever he came round for a glass of water, because Murdoch had banned me from drinking in the office because of the effect that I was having anyway without alcohol in me. And when he came round, Tebbit comes round, I give him water. And anyway, after half an hour, he gets up. He said, I can't be sitting around drinking water with you all night. And I told Murdoch that. Murdoch went mad. He said, that wasn't supposed to be for the guests. It was supposed to be an idiot like you that shouldn't be drinking. Anyway, so he was a great man in a great team. They were all very strong. The thing I loved about Tebbit was kicking the unions about, which was a joy. I was working in the print. It was an absolute nightmare. These guys were taking it away in wheelbarrows and they were doing no work and telling you what could be published in the paper. It was a nightmare. He stopped all that. They stopped all that. Without Tebbit, without Thatcher, Wapping would never have happened. Those thugs would have got into Wapping and they would have wrecked that plant. And then thanks to the police, but mainly thanks to Thatcher and what she did against the miners, who had exactly the same idea. And now, ladies and gentlemen, watch what's going to happen over the next 2 or 3 years under Starmer.
Scott, on the day somebody's died, it's not the time to bemoan them, but he was a very divisive figure and representing the left. There were certainly people on the left who found him very difficult to stomach.
Yes, I mean, I think as a person, clearly what was so impressive about him was what he gave up for his wife. I mean, that you then realised that actually underneath all of this was somebody who really, really cared and was willing to put other things first. As a politician, obviously, I completely opposed what he did. I do not agree with Kelvin at all. I mean, I think that the problem with the things that he brought in is it made it very, very difficult for workers. It brought in what we were having, you know, the zero. I mean, he didn't bring in 0 hours contracts, obviously, but it meant the precarious jobs for so many people were made possible. I do think the cricket test was pretty racist, actually, and very, very divisive. And I think that he liked to do those sort of things, but actually they had a terrible effect, and the waves went on.
But that underneath it, his looking after Margaret really stopped him becoming Prime Minister. And
yeah,
he would have been a very good leader of the party.
He was asked to stand when she stepped down, and he did think about it. He confessed to me that he had. But he realised his overriding commitment was to Margaret. And he had given her the commitment that he would eschew politics and be at home. Yeah. And he realised that was the case. He had to make that decision, and that's what changed everything for him. He still had plenty of life, as it were, left in him as a politician, but he said that Margaret needs me more than anybody else, and so that's what he did, really.
Well, thank you very much to my panel and to Sir Ian. In a moment, could thousands of criminals be on the cusp of escaping criminal records in order to stop prisons from overflowing? Find out shortly.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Things have turned a little cooler across Italy, and a brisk northerly breeze will keep that going in Rome. Some heavy rain recently in Croatia, that's clearing away. Small chance of a shower in Madeira, but the Canaries fine, dry and sunny, as is Portugal and most of southern Spain. So there is the chance of 1 or 2 showers near Barcelona. It's fine and sunny across Greece and Turkey. Plenty of sunshine on offer here, turning dry now in Croatia, as I said. A chance of 1 or 2 showers later this week, though, in Rome. Goodbye.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Hot and sunny weather is on the way for virtually all of us, but overnight it will be gloomy and damp in the northwest. Clear spells elsewhere, turning increasingly warm through the day.
on Wednesday as high pressure builds in. However, over the top of that high, we do have some weak weather fronts pushing into northwestern parts of the UK. That's been thickening up the cloud across western Scotland and Northern Ireland through the day. Those thicker clouds push into the north and west of England, as well as Wales overnight, bringing some drizzle in places, particularly northwestern hills and coasts. A lot of hill fog and coastal mist around as we start off Wednesday here, but a mild start, cooler towards the southeast, but that's where we see the best of the sunshine first thing, and temperatures quickly rising. And in fact, it's blue skies for much of East Anglia, the south and southeast of England, some patchy cloud towards Devon and Cornwall, Somerset as well. West Wales, I think some thicker cloud over North and West Wales and some drizzle over the hills. But it's Western Scotland, Northern Ireland where we see the thickest cloud and some mist and murk, as well as outbreaks of rain and drizzle. The clouds tend to lift and break in many places during the morning. Skies turn brighter, but with the exception of Western Scotland, where it stays generally gloomy and damp throughout much of the day. Eastern Scotland faring well for sunny skies, likewise for England, Wales, Northern Ireland, skies brightening. Sunny spells and turning warmer. A warmer day than Tuesday, and it's going to turn hotter still as that high pressure increasingly dominates the weather. So we start off once again on Thursday with some low cloud and some drizzle for the north and west of Scotland, but it tends to fizzle away and push north through the day as that area of high pressure exerts its influence, and with increasing spells of sunshine during the rest of the week and into the weekend, we're going to see the heat build not just in the south but widely across the UK.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates,
5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5.
You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah.
Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight on the unpredictable.
What does she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace
Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
The 12th, a day to celebrate history, community and family here in Northern Ireland. Join me, Arlene Foster.
And me, Dougie Beattie, as we bring you live coverage of the July 12th celebrations.
Right across the United Kingdom. It's all happening here on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sir Brian Leveson of press censorship fame is currently conducting a review into the criminal justice system, and his report, which is expected to be released later this week, will recommend out-of-court resolutions for offences like theft, public disorder and drug taking. But perhaps what's even more alarming is that, as the Times revealed last week, defendants charged with fraud and some sexual offences would be among those who could lose their automatic right to a jury trial. Well, my most pugnacious panel is still with me, the former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie, and the former Labour Party Special Advisor, Scarlett Maguire. Scarlett, the Labour Party used to believe in juries and in people deciding. Now it seems as if we're going to get a judge who doesn't like the freedom of the press hacking away at another of our basic freedoms.
Yes, I think let's not go for Leveson, who you might not like, but actually tried to do good things for the public. But actually, we've got 2 problems, haven't we? One is we've got very full prisons so that people are being let out of them. And 2, we have a court system that is absolutely stuck. And so what Leveson is talking about is trying to ease the court system so that people go through. I mean, some people are in custody for things that they're pleading innocent, not guilty to, and they'll be, by the time it gets to the court case, it doesn't matter whether they're guilty or innocent, they'll have done the time. We've got to do something about dealing with the court system.
That's absolutely right, and there are, I think, 18,000 people on remand, but you don't get it right by taking away one of the linchpins of justice, do you, which is trial by your peers.
So how how do you try and get more people through? That's the point. Is that I understand the danger. I mean, people are being encouraged to vote to plead guilty because they'll have 40% of their sentences if they plead guilty. So therefore, that will go a lot faster. I mean, I just think that yes, I absolutely believe in the jury system. So does the Labour government. But actually, how do we get these people through?
Kelvin, let me bring you in, because surely the judges just work a little bit harder. They stop quite early. They don't start the day very early. The courts have lots of empty courtrooms. It just needs a bit of gumption and organisation.
Well, yes, I agree with that. But first of all, let's just look at the guy who is putting this report together. Now, Brian Levison has been... I mean, it's extraordinary how these people make it to the top. He was the guy that was the prosecutor of Ken Dodd on a tax issue, and it is quoted as he lost the court. And Ken Dodd unbelievably walked, despite the fact that he had tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands he'd never paid in tax. The other aspect about Levison, of course, is that he wanted a regulator, a socialist regulator of the press. Every time he comes up with an idea, it is basically to stop ordinary people having their say. And ordinary people, if you put this out for a judgment, if you put it out for polling, you put it out for a referendum, they would be quite clear. Those things that they consider as small, you know, forms like some forms of ABH in which you get beaten up in the street, right, in which you're saying you shouldn't go to jail for that. I say ordinary people would say, I definitely want somebody to go to jail. If you have fraud put on you, right, you're working for a small business and somebody has taken $4,000 out, right, which may not look like much money. Under this, these people would not face serious consequence, and I think they should face serious consequence.
But it's also the condescension of this grand judge. He thinks juries are too stupid to do fraud cases.
I don't know whether he thinks that or he's really trying to deal with
That's the argument that's been put forward, is that juries don't understand fraud.
Yes, they don't understand.
And I think that's really
fraud.
dangerous, because actually juries understand whether somebody's telling the truth or not. And
yes, I suppose it's a feeling that you get, even if you can't quite understand. I mean, some of these fraud cases, by the way, are way beyond anything anybody could understand. Even you might be challenged by that. But even so, I want to see them face a jury. I want to see them face the judge, rather than keep passing it down to the bottom. In the end, you know, there'll be a decision. It'll be like the way the medical world's going, in which somebody who's actually read a book will actually decide whether you actually get sentenced or not.
Scarlett, you can have a final word on this.
I think we have to deal with the problem that we're facing. I think that that as they say, justice delayed is justice denied, and we need to get more people through the courts.
I can trade slogans with you. Hard cases make bad law. Anyway, that was my brilliant panel. We're going to be having His Majesty in a moment. Unlike Trump, who normally joins us at this time, today it's the King. We're going up in the world on GB News. We get all these exclusives for you night after night.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up? About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The 12th, a day to celebrate history, community and family here in Northern Ireland. Join me, Arlene Foster.
And me, Dougie Beattie, as we bring you live coverage of the July 12th celebrations.
Right across the United Kingdom. It's all happening here on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, we're just waiting for tonight's special guest live from Windsor Castle when His Majesty is going to be joining GB News. I think it's a GB News first. But we've already heard a little bit about his speech, and we're going to discuss that with Kelvin Mackenzie and Scarlett Maguire. Kelvin, you're a great friend of the French, marvellous lot. They give us fine wine and things like that.
Yes, I don't know what this idea is that in some odd way that they're friends of ours. I mean, it's an absurd idea. They happen to be neighbours of ours. Normally you don't like your neighbour anyway. And under these circumstances, we seem to have given them £700 or £800 million. And all that seems to happen is, under the expert guidance of our Labour leadership, we now have 50% more migrants coming across the Channel than ever before. So they're doing nothing for us. They're paying lip service, and they decide, I tell you what, we need some good PR ahead of Macron coming over. Why don't we slash a boat and claim that this is what's going to happen? And immediately that happens, they then announce, actually, we're never going to do it again. It was basically a PR job. They are shockers. They're trousering our money, and we should stop being friends with them. And when Farage comes in, he's going to turn those boats back, and we'll be basically on the edge of war, actually.
Scarlett, they've had £700 million from us. Daily Mail saying, give us our money back. And they've stopped one boat yesterday.
No, definitely.
Whereas the Belgians, brave old Belgium, has stopped 90% of the boats, and they've got much less money.
Apparently, they stop a third of the boats. Right. I mean, what the problem for the French is that it is a massive, massive coastline. But so even 1 in 3 boats is actually better than nothing. And if nothing was happening, so this money has been given. When you were in power, you gave it to them. I mean,
not me personally. I wouldn't have given
you
them
personally, but your cabinet did, and the cabinet before you, and the cabinet after you. So this is a cross-party thing. And actually, it was begun by David Blunkett.
But most cross-party things don't work, do they?
It's
often a mistake.
Well, I'm
not one for consensus.
No,
I
think consensus absolutely know you're not one for consensus. So what I'm is that actually it's not that this has suddenly started happening, Kelvin. Much as you would like to pretend that everything that went wrong,
it has got worse under Starmer. 50% worse than this time last year. Come on, those are the numbers. What can we do about it? And by the way, the French have done nothing. The idea of keep on saying we have a long border, they could deal with that by just turning the boats round and pushing them back onto the sand. Couldn't they? They could turn it round themselves. Yes, I agree, it's a difficult prospect, but they've got nothing else to do. They're not fighting any wars, are they, the French?
What I'm saying, Kelvin, actually, which is rather more important, is that they are stopping boats, right? They stop. If you read, even the Daily Telegraph says that they're stopping about a third of the boats. If they weren't stopping any of the boats, we'd have stopped giving them the money. The problem they have is they have these people who are absolutely determined to cross. And they used to do it in lorries, right? And actually, the government was really good at stopping the lorries. They used to do it. got on the Eurostar. Some of them still do. Lorries still come in, but then they discovered boats. And once we found a way of stopping boats, there'll be something else. These are people who came across the Med.
You're making it sound as though 50,000 people are not making their way across the Channel this year. This is an absolute catastrophe, and it has political ramifications. The political ramifications are everybody thinks the Starmer is an idiot and also thought the Tories before them were idiots, which is why I am astonished that people don't see in their own interest that if we are going to stop Nigel Farage coming in, the easiest way to do it would actually be to take this constant saw, this constant nightly picture, this constant paragraph which says 800 people, 900 people arrived on our doorstep to a country which is not doing very well. We are not actually a wealthy country right now. Why doesn't anybody just say, why doesn't Starmer say, we aren't taking anybody else on? And the reason is for that is that he would not be prepared to tell the Royal Navy, turn those boats back.
No, but the better way of doing it, actually, which is what used to happen many years ago and needs to happen again, is that people are processed within weeks and then they're sent home. It's just that simple.
But unfortunately, when they're processed, we're granting them asylum. 98% of people from Syria get asylum, the overwhelming majority of those from Afghanistan. That's why we needed Rwanda, because then they'd have got asylum there rather than this country.
I mean, Rwanda was for 500 people. I mean,
but the
Rwanda would have
effect would have been very important.
No,
it was having a deterrent effect even before it started, with people going to the Republic of Ireland rather than coming to us.
That's fine. So they go to the Republic of Ireland because they want to go to an English-speaking place. But actually,
they don't come to us.
No,
don't fall on our taxpayer.
They will go on coming to us. What we have to do, and of course, you know as well as I do that if they're coming from Syria or if they're coming from Afghanistan, they are refugees. That's the problem. Is are we saying no to refugees?
Yes, you see, that is a very good point, Scarlett. My answer to that is yes. We are saying we are actually, as a nation, we are not creating enough wealth. We have too many people coming in, changing the nature and the culture of our country. I actually believe that we should actually say, I tell you what, for the next 5 years, we've done our bit. We're not taking anybody else under any circumstances.
And they are mainly economic migrants. If you look at them, they are young men who have paid thousands of pounds to come. The women and children are staying at home. The real migrants, the people who would be refugees, aren't coming.
Men and refugees too. Men are escaping things. They're not just...
They're young men with family savings. They're not the halt and the lame.
No, but actually what we've seen from this country is some of the best people are the children of refugees and the refugees.
I don't deny that for a moment.
I'm not arguing about them. What I'm saying is that what we need to do is we need to process people. If you say they're economic migrants, then they should be sent. They should be sent back. But these are people who are going to find their way here one way or another, right? These are people. A lot of them have already crossed the Mediterranean.
That you can control the borders. He's got 91% reduction. We're 91% reduction. Anyway, before I go to Patrick, I think you're going to get the King coming on your programme rather than mine. Macron missed a trick. He forgot to ask for the Waterloo and Trafalgar pictures to be covered up in the Royal Gallery, unlike de Gaulle. So he had to look and see how France had been defeated in the past. Patrick, are you going to be discussing all of this?
Well, absolutely, yes. It will be an honour and a privilege to take the King live on my show, and also, on a slightly lesser note, Emmanuel Macron as well. So we will be taking both of those things and reacting to it. I am also going to be taking a stand tonight at 10 p.m. For too long in Britain, people have been silenced for fear of being smeared as an Islamophobe. Tonight, I'm calling out the people that have sought to do that, calling out the people that have called people a racist for having very, very legitimate concerns about things like mass immigration, integration, the rape gang scandal, etc. So I'm going to be talking about all of that. There's also a lot of news flying around about the OBR savaging Labour, aren't they? They essentially seem to say that Labour is bankrupting Britain, although, to be fair, the Tories didn't do a particularly great job, did they, of getting that national debt down? So we'll be talking about all of that. And those junior doctors, now residents, 22% pay rise. How do they say thank you? Back out on strike again. Do you have any sympathy for them? All of that and much more coming your way very shortly.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Hot and sunny weather is on the way for virtually all of us, but overnight it will be gloomy and damp in the northwest. Clear spells elsewhere, turning increasingly warm through the day on Wednesday as high pressure builds in. However, over the top of that high, we do have some weak weather fronts pushing into northwestern parts of the UK. That's been thickening up the cloud across western Scotland and Northern Ireland through the day. Those thicker clouds push into the north and west of England, as well as Wales overnight. Bringing some drizzle in places, particularly northwestern hills and coasts. A lot of hill fog and coastal mist around as we start off Wednesday here, but a mild start, cooler towards the southeast, but that's where we see the best of the sunshine first thing and temperatures quickly rising. And in fact, it's blue skies for much of East Anglia, the south and southeast of England, some patchy cloud towards Devon and Cornwall, Somerset as well. West Wales, I think some thicker cloud over North and West Wales and some drizzle over the hills. But it's Western Scotland, Northern Ireland where we see the thickest cloud and some mist and murk, as well as outbreaks of rain and drizzle. The clouds tend to lift and break in many places during the morning. Skies turn brighter, but with the exception of Western Scotland, where it stays generally gloomy and damp throughout much of the day. Eastern Scotland faring well for sunny skies, likewise for England, Wales, Northern Ireland, skies brightening. Sunny spells and turning warmer. A warmer day than Tuesday, and it's going to turn hotter still as that high pressure increasingly dominates the weather. So we start off once again on Thursday with some low cloud and some drizzle for the north and west of Scotland, but it tends to fizzle away and push north through the day as that area of high pressure exerts its influence, and with increasing spells of sunshine during the rest of the week and into the weekend, we're going to see the heat build not just in the south but widely across the UK.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're kick-starting summer with your chance to win our biggest cash prize to date, as there's an incredible £54,321 in tax-free cash to be won. What would you spend it on? A brand new car, the holiday of a lifetime, or just sit back, relax and remove some of those day-to-day financial stresses? For another chance to win, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we